Welcome to Big Blend Radio, where we celebrate variety and how it adds spice to quality of life. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're doing one of our Big Blend Radio Success Insider conversations, this time with Matt Cost. He is an awesome writer. He's prolific for sure. He writes historical fiction and mystery novels. He's got a number of series. We're going to talk about them and then talk about his career. He's had multiple careers in his life, and I think that all helps to be a good author. So check out his website, mattcost.net. So welcome back, Matt. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me back, and it's good to
Hey.
chat with you and see you again.
Yeah, you too. And so today we should be excited because I know it's not like we're recording this, but today is the day of another, mainly mystery coming out, right?
Yes, absolutely. We've got Mainly Mayhem coming out. So it's the
Mainly
sixth,
mayhem.
Mainly Mayhem. It is the sixth book in my Goff Langdon Mainly Mystery series, spelled like the state.
Yes, you like because you're in Maine, you know.
Right. Yeah,
Now,
this
have,
series.
have you always lived in Maine?
Uh, I moved to Maine when I was 8 years old and had
Mhm.
a brief sojourn outside of Maine after college for a couple years before moving back to Maine. So most
Ah.
most of my life.
So because a lot of your books are set in Maine till we get into the historical fiction. Then you go to Cuba and all kinds of places, but it's really cool because I don't think getting to Maine is a whole other deal, compared to people going to like California or, you know what I mean? It just feels like it's far away for people. So I think it's a really cool way to represent your state.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people have a nice vision of what Maine is and like to read about,
Mm.
the idyllic Maine summers, if not the harsh Maine winters.
Mhm.
So I do
Well,
have two.
well, you got fall. That's supposed to be beautiful where you
It's
are.
absolutely gorgeous. We're just on the tail end of it now, so we've lost most of the
Oh,
leaves, but it's always
wow.
stunningly gorgeous here.
So mysteries. Tell us about the mystery coming out now so everyone can get set in Maine, but yeah,
Yeah,
tell us about Goff. That's a good
it's
name.
actually set in my hometown of Brunswick. It's the first
Okay.
series that I started in the mysteries. The first book, Mainly Power, was selected as the Maine Humanities Council Fiction Book of the Year in
Oh,
2020. So that kind of got me off and running. And now we're on to the sixth book in that series,
wow.
Mainly Mayhem. And in it, we try and tie up the first five. So we've got power, fear, money, angst, and just plain wickedness that we tie together into mayhem. And what we have is Goff Langdon is a private investigator slash mystery bookstore owner in Brunswick. And he's hired by the assistant to the chief of staff to the president of the United States to be the local liaison to two FBI agents who are going to do a
Mm.
background check on a man from Brunswick who's been nominated to be a Supreme Court justice. And
Ooh.
so that kind of gets us off and running. And Langdon is going to uncover some shenanigans of this person back in his Bowdoin College days, but nothing
Mm.
so bad as to uh, knock him off from being a Supreme Court justice. Or maybe there is more, and things start to heat up, and the shenanigans turn into maybe more nastiness than just shenanigans, or maybe nothing at all. So
Mm.
that's kind of the impetus of the story.
I think we're all kind of getting familiar with that kind of shenanigans. That's putting it lightly, isn't it? Shenanigans. That's a good word though, but it feels more fun than, you know.
Yeah, shenanigans is on the fun side of things, and
Yeah.
we all have some shenanigans in our past, and
Do
hopefully,
we?
some of them we don't want exposed, but it would be nothing more than perhaps just embarrassing. But
Yeah.
trying to uncover whether it was just shenanigans or more of a nasty shenanigans past is what Langdon is tasked with doing here.
Ah. So, do you do this a lot as a writer? Go, what if? Is that kind of like the central thing? What if this happened? What if that happened? And you explore that and go, All right, let's go down that rabbit hole. Like you're creating your own rabbit holes, right? As a writer.
No, absolutely, and that's sort of where ideas come from, which
Mm,
is the very first stage of 6 parts of the evolution of a book is to come up with an idea.
mm,
So they could range from, many come from the current day news and things that are happening that I see and I take much further, or, recently I published Pirate Trap, which was the 5th book in my Clay Wolf series. And that idea came from when I was 4 years old, I think, and I fell in love
mm.
with pirates. So I wanted to write a pirate book, and one thing
Yeah.
led to another. So this, is based with the recent appointment of Judge Kavanaugh, but it really is not a witch hunt of any sort like that. And it's not exactly that. I'm not going after, but I became very involved in the process of how a
Mm,
Supreme Court justice is nominated and vetted and background checks done. And I thought getting into something like that would be sort of exciting, as well
mm.
as, how we sort of touched upon, we all have some shenanigans in our past and, you know, sorting out whether, it's just an embarrassing thing that we did or if it was a nasty thing that we did. So
Oh, the
that's the
embarrassing,
gray
yeah.
areas.
And it can happen even while someone's in service, even while they're a judge. It's like, did they maintain without shenanigans? You know?
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Once prone to shenanigans, usually prone to shenanigans, right?
Yeah, mine would go with the embarrassing shenanigans, like
Right.
continuously. It hasn't ended. I don't think a day goes by without I've done, oh my gosh, I did that. Like, don't tell. It's why we don't want public figures in our lives. We
Right.
don't, you'll get caught because that's the thing. As you develop characters, you put people together, right? And sometimes they're not supposed to be, but that's the whole part of it. It's like whoever you befriend, like if you befriend someone and maybe they're a high school friend and they become super famous, do you really want to stay friends with them? Because it starts in on your life too. Like I wouldn't want to be friends with someone super famous. I may want to be friends with them, but like, can you keep it quiet? Like I don't want paparazzi and you know what I mean?
Right.
That would be
Absolutely.
weird.
Being in the orbit of somebody. And, I think that I would like to sell a few more books, but I certainly don't want to become famous.
God,
I
could you
don't want to be
imagine?
put into the spotlight for it.
And then people wonder why they go crazy, why, especially teen stars. I mean, look at what happened with Britney Spears and things like that. It's like, how do you say, like, be sane through all of that? I would go nuts. I don't know. We do
No,
podcasts, but we're private. Yeah, it's different. You know what I mean?
no, I would not like it at all, but I do think that
Mm,
some people revel in it. And, once in the
yes.
spotlight, they become addicted to it almost and, need that
Oh,
reaffirmation.
yeah. Isn't that weird? They could have all the money in the world, but power, and it's really about notoriety more than it is like a power to them. It is a power source that they have that spotlight on them. So that's interesting. Do you get into people's psyches then? What makes people tick to
Oh,
write?
absolutely. Absolutely trying to dig through what makes people tick is, and usually they tell me on the
Mm,
pages, I'll, when I'm writing a book, which is all the time,
yeah.
my mind is always working over what is this person going to do because this thing happened, and you know, and then why do they do that? What in
Mm,
their past or what outside forces or external forces are being exerted to make them do whatever they do.
mm. And there's always something hidden that you don't know. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's
Absolutely. And sometimes we don't even expose those on the pages, it's still
mm,
a hidden secret shrouded because
mm.
as in real life we don't always know what secrets people hide. So
Don't, yeah. I remember Nancy telling a story of it was a preacher, I think, or something, and he said, telling about good and bad. And he goes, I could be a preacher in a wolf in a preacher's clothing kind of thing. And Nancy looks at him and she's like, now that was it. And then later he did do something that everybody was in shock over. And she was like, no, you already said so. Could be. And then she looked at him and went, you are. And he was. That's like, you never know. The town mayor is not always clean. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
like, it's yeah, I don't sometimes it and then like as you're writing when there's murder and mayhem and things like that involved in a mystery, you've got the obvious people, right? You have to put the obvious that, oh, it could be. And then there's the not obvious, but a lot of people go directly to the non-obvious. So how do you hide your characters that actually did the deed? And you're
Yeah,
not
it
going to
goes
tell the
back to
secret
something
either
that we
because they were going to know.
it goes back to something that we were just talking about, actually. You mentioning that you would not want to be friends with somebody that was suddenly cast into the spotlight
Hmm.
and, became really famous, because then that would swing over onto you. What is happening here is Langdon is beginning to investigate the friends of Judge Cornelius Remington, and some of these people might have done the really bad things unbeknownst to Judge Remington
Oh.
or not. And so there were a group of four of them, some 30 plus years earlier at Bowdoin College, who called themselves the Maine Men of Mayhem because they liked to play pranks on others. And they were all
Oh.
from Maine, the four of them. And they have remained friends throughout the years. So those with a couple other people thrown into the mix, clouds what is really going on as well. So
Ooh,
uh,
that's kind of creepy, because
yeah,
even well, you look at what happens in colleges with sororities and stuff like that and hazing and there was a rash of really bad stuff happening in college, for with kids doing pranks that went way out of hand, and now I think we're swinging the pole the opposite end now.
yeah, absolutely. I think things are getting better, and
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, in some instances, getting worse, because there's a reaction to the improvement on,
Mm-hmm.
hazing sort of things, because there's people that think, oh, I did that when I was a kid, and
Mm.
I'm okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So they get
Yeah,
angry about it. But I think there was absolutely a lot of hazing back in the 80s when I was in college, and that's when I set Judge Remington back into college as well. So
that's cool. So
yeah.
you take things from your past too. And being a teacher, as you taught high school for a while, was it mostly history or what were you teaching?
Mostly junior high, actually, seventh and
Oh,
eighth
okay.
graders, and it was social studies, which is primarily
Cool.
history and
Yeah.
government and things like that as well.
That's cool. That's cool that you have that. Because, like, when I got to this country, I had no clue how it worked. And I kept looking at this going, why are people doing this? This doesn't make sense. And guess where I'm at now? This doesn't
It
make
doesn't
sense.
make sense again.
It doesn't really matter. But to understand, and I think the crazier it gets, the more it makes us all look and do exactly what you like, how you write. Can they really get away with this? Can they really do this? And then you go, oh my God, maybe. Like, so it's kind of like a mystery what's going on in politics these days. So it's kind of similar. So having that background has got to help you with what you're writing, right?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Mm,
I also write some historicals, so that helps with
yeah.
that. But, probably my teaching of government, led to my fascination with the whole nominating process for the Supreme Court bench, and,
Mm,
the different vetting that follows and is involved. So
yeah.
absolutely.
Wow. So right now you have, am I right? You've got your historical fiction. So Love in a Time of Hate. I Am Cuba, Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. Nancy loves that book. Um, at Every Hazard. So it sounds like the mysteries came before the history, or they just kind of
Um,
one led to the other.
I actually wrote my first historical fiction, my first book, in 1991, fresh out of college,
Mm-hmm.
which was I Am Cuba, the Fidel Castro and the Cuban Revolution. And that pretty much shot me to stardom overnight, because a mere 29 years later, in 2020, it was my first traditionally published book. So,
Wow.
overnight success story of just
Yeah.
29 years.
Yeah. Just like here it is from A to B. But I mean, you did things in between, but then once you get it published, I mean, it takes a lot to write. I mean, even all the research, and you didn't have Google in 1991.
Right. Absolutely. So there was a lot of research and the need to visit Cuba, which didn't happen until 2016, and
Oh, cool.
to give a more sincere approach. So yeah, to answer the question, I had written a couple historical fiction books first before I got into the mysteries,
Mm,
and have really been engaged with the mysteries. So I'm writing a lot more mysteries than historical fiction these days.
mhm.
But recently I did skewer and combine the two of them, my love of histories and mysteries, into a new series, which is my Brooklyn 8 Ballot series set in
I love that. Yes.
1920s. So,
Yeah, that's cool.
so the second book in that series just came out in July,
This
City
is
Gone Askew.
you had Velma, the first Velma Gone Awry. With that was the first
Yep,
one, right? I think
yep,
yeah, you were on the show with that. Isn't that when we met? I don't know. We've
yep,
done a lot of happy hour shows in between. I don't know.
yeah. No, that
We
was
just stay
uh,
happy.
we met and chatted in April of 23, I believe.
Okay, yeah.
That's when
It
Velma came out.
Velma's cool. You know that to me, doing history way like it's not way well. It's 100 years ago. Just how did that happen? Like how, now that I just kind of dawned on me, like that was 100 years ago. And that maybe it's because I listened to a lot of that music from that era, and I don't know. I just
You know what's
identify
really
with it.
funny is I feel like not much has changed in the 100 years from
Oh, no
1924
kidding.
to 2024.
Are we going to talk about women's rights and eugenics again? Didn't we just do that conversation too?
Yeah, no, we can bypass it, but not much has
Yeah.
changed. We'll leave it at that.
Just yeah, really. I mean, even let's okay, yeah. Let's just nothing's really changed. So you've got the Clay Wolf series too, the Port
Yep,
Essex series. So that's another Maine, and so you've got Brooklyn and Maine in your three series. But I heard a rumor through Facebook. You know, Facebook is good at gossip, right? And I heard a rumor that a new series is coming out. So when I said prolific, you really are like you don't stop. Doesn't sound
yeah.
like.
No, I've been publishing 3 books a year, so
That's a
um,
lot.
it keeps me busy. So yeah, I have a new series with a new publisher. I signed a
Mm.
contract to do a 3 book series with Level Best Books. And the
Cool.
first book comes out in April of 25, and that's called The Not So Merry Adventures of Max Creed. And it is a modern day Robin Hood story where Max Creed and his band of uh, merry and not so merry men and women work on bringing justice for the poor against the ultra wealthy that have abused them in one way or another.
What era is this set in? Like what
It's
time period?
current day, and
Oh, this is fun.
it's contemporary, and their office is technically set in Bryant Park in Manhattan, but it's very much a global, international, billionaires racing around the world sort of thriller. So it jumps all over the world.
Well, I hope you put one of my favorite rich people in there. Richard Branson. You got to put him in there because he does good stuff. He's like a little Robin Hood, I think. He's done good. Well, and like he's fascinating to me because he was one of the first. He wrote his memoir was talking about the magazine industry, which is like at one point it was with dentists at being at one of the highest rate publishers and media or at highest rates of suicide. And let me tell you, I can agree at times because of the deadlines, the publishing, and the drama of it all. But he went in to get his loan for his magazine. That's what he wanted to do because he was just, it was like, and he was really good at PR stunts. I mean, the best person in PR stunts ever and fun, right? Shenanigans. He's a good shenanigan kind of person, a lot of giving back, but he went in to get his first loan for his magazine, walked into the bank with jeans and barefoot, and he got it. He just he got it. It's like, that's never going to happen again. He ruined it for all of us. So I think he should be in there. Can you put him in there? Come on.
Uh,
Even a
well,
sighting.
well, it's probably a little late to add him, but maybe into the third
Oh,
book. The second book is written, but unfortunately, Max Creed, who has become a billionaire by himself through various means I don't need to get into now, but he was not always a billionaire, but he was exacting revenge upon a billionaire that got him started in life, and he ended up stealing all this person's money or relieving him of the money. And
mm,
so, um,
this will be fun.
other than that, the billionaires are usually the bad people. So we don't want to, but maybe we can add some good billionaires.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of stuck on that one. And
Yeah,
I don't know if he's at the billionaire status. I think he is. And Mark Cuban's a good billionaire.
yeah.
He's a nice billionaire, with hard working for it and luck. He says it's luck, you know.
I
And
just I was just in Texas and I had dinner with a
oh,
billionaire who
wow.
we've had some overlapping business and different things and have become friendly with. And I discovered that he was voting the correct way in the upcoming election. So that was nice
If
to
you
hear.
had
A
dinner with
billionaire.
Mark Cuban, like, you know what, we want every detail.
No, it was not Mark Cuban. It was
Okay,
another
but it sounds
Texan.
you're in Texas, so but yeah. No, I think it is about how you got it and what you do with it. I mean, it's they talk about people when they win the lottery, right? And then lose it like in a few days. I'm like, how do you lose all that money in a few days? I don't get it. Like, I don't get it, but it
Well,
happens.
first of all, I think you discover a lot of relatives and friends that you didn't know you had.
See, so it'd be time to go out of the country.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll hide in Maine, in the woods somewhere. So it, I love this whole Robin Hood theme. And I think there's even a nonprofit called the Robin Hood or some kind of investing something like that. I don't know. I don't know what I'm
Uh,
talking about, but there is
I'll have to look
something.
it up.
There's something cool with the Robin Hood thing. But I love your names, your character names, Max Creed, and you're talking about billionaires. It's smart. So, like, just do you like search for names and mull them over? Like when bands are looking how to name their band and their albums, even the songs, and sometimes they get the weirdest song titles, and then you're like, but it sticks, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I sometimes search and, sometimes just in everyday life, I come across a name and say, oh, that would be a great name for,
Yeah.
a cop or a protagonist or an antagonist or whatever it may be. So,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth, when people give me really stupid bad reviews on sites like Amazon or Goodreads, I often will incorporate their name into somebody that quickly gets killed off or
You're going to
does
get cut
something
off Facebook
horrible.
just now. You are. Well, yeah. And okay. So let's talk about that. You do all this work, 3 books plus a year now with this new series, right?
Yeah.
You, the reviews, I heard this is like the most important thing for authors to get reviews, get reviews, get reviews. And even bad reviews help it. But I don't know, man. I want to do a show just on reviews because some people just are like the review Nazis, man. They're, just to little mom and pop shops and things like that. And you're like, dude, every chef has a bad day. Like, calm down, you know. And then sometimes it 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 needs to happen. Sometimes it's the only way you can get help in these days. Like if you're dealing with anything tech, sometimes Facebook is your friend. And I hate to be that person. And I very like you're gonna have to really make me mad to get me to do a negative review. But what is that like having to do that side of the business when your creative brain wants to, give another good name to a protagonist?
I mean, I guess the question is with reviews and how you
Mm.
deal with good and bad reviews. And obviously, the good ones are nice and, make you feel good and reaffirm, and make you feel good about what you're doing. And then there's the middle ground of a bad review where
Mm.
somebody just you feel they didn't connect with your book. Maybe they don't like that kind of book.
Mm.
Maybe there's more profanity or violence than they care for, or less
Oh,
profanity or violence than they care for, or maybe they didn't realize that they were reading a mystery or a thriller in the first place. And you kind of get their review, and they're usually like a 3-star review, and you say, okay, that book just wasn't for you, and not every book is for every person.
right.
But then you get the haters out there who, just give bad reviews. One of my favorite haters out there was, I was on Goodreads and I realized that one of the Mainly books had gotten a 1-star review on Goodreads. And then I said, that name looks familiar. And I looked back and I realized that that person had read the first 3 books in the Mainly Mystery series and given it 1 star each time and said bad things about them. And you're not supposed
Like,
to
why?
respond to these people, but I finally had to message them and say, please stop reading my books if you don't like them.
Yeah. And why are you doing that? And some people are like that, where they will never give anyone like 5 stars because they're like, oh, they need to be docked so that they have room for improvement. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's people who,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
No, people have different rating systems, Somebody will give you 3 stars and say nothing but good things about it, but
yeah,
they
it's like,
feel like 3 stars is good.
well, and what's hard is the algorithms of these sites. So it's like sometimes, like, I have friends in different businesses, and one business I know really well, and it's exceptional and caring and awesome. And somebody goes in and it's just completely off the wall. And I'm reading this going, I know this business so well. I know the people. I know this is like somebody off the wall, like just going, I know I had a bad day and just decided, you know what? I'm just going to trash you too. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe just got a divorce or something, did this whole like whatever. And somehow, like Google will keep that at the top and the good ones below. Like, so it's like how to flip the algorithm so that the bad ones are at the top. It's
Right.
weird. Yeah.
Yeah, it is strange. And, I call them the haters. And,
Yeah. That's a good way of
there's
looking at
probably
it.
10% of our population out there,
Yeah.
that if you run onto the street, they're the ones that don't say hi if you say hi to them, or,
Oh,
are just angry about things. And I guess their
that's
life probably isn't going well, so they take it out on others.
that's so funny about the people who don't say hi, like especially if you're on a hike and you're on a hiking trail in parks, like you're out in nature,
Yeah.
you're healthy, the sun is shining, there's wildflowers and mountain vistas and views and birds. Like, all right, come on, this is good. Like, right? And you think people out on the trail are going to be just as happy as you are. No, sometimes you go and you go, hi, hi, and then you'll get this look like, how dare you
Right? Like
even
you've
look at
grown a
me?
second head.
Yeah. And then I'm like, what happened? Like now that's where our brains start to go, okay, we want to know what happened at the top of the hill. Like, did your husband drag you to a place you didn't want to go? He wanted to see the waterfall, or maybe it's the other way around, but she is mad. Or is she mad because the husband was in front and you said hello to the husband first? Like, so this is what Nancy and I do, like in our
Well,
travels, is
me as a mystery
doing this.
writer, I would say, did you leave your husband up on top of the mountain cut into little tiny pieces?
Yes, and is this not your husband? This is your helper.
Yes.
And he left the toe sticking out of the leaves. Yeah, you told him not to. But isn't that the fun part as a writer, is the world is a different, it's like it's a petri dish. Like everything is like something to look at as, fuel for writing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I think I've mentioned this to you before, but,
Mm.
one of my favorite things is when my editor tells me that something I've written is too unbelievable. And I say, no, that's a real fact of something that happened in real life. And he says, but it's still unbelievable. And so, the moral being is a lot of real life is more unbelievable than fiction is.
Yeah. Well, and then the fact that you incorporate, well, that's the thing, you tend to bring in really cool topics that make you think and make you start to go down the research rabbit hole yourself. And is that what you want people to do from reading your books too? Is kind of like open up a different side of maybe you didn't know about this kind of topic and now you're going to check something new out?
Yeah, it's absolutely, I love
Mhm,
it if I can tweak that interest in people, but it really
mm,
starts with the fact that it's something that tweaked my interest. And
mhm.
if I'm going to spend 4 months writing a book, 4 months editing a book, and 4 months marketing a book, it's
Yeah.
gonna have to be something that's really fascinating to me. And so I
Mm,
hope that fascination gets carried on, but
mm,
I don't just write a bank robbery, mystery series. I try and get into a deeper theme and topic, whether it's,
mm.
some that we've talked about, genome editings, or perhaps an upcoming cult conversation we might have, or
We can't wait for that. Everyone, November 18th, stay tuned. It's Cult Awareness Day. I mean, come on, it's fascinating what people do. Like it is. And you always like, what if? The what ifs is what I really enjoy. So let's talk about writing itself, like the actual act of sitting down, and people talk about writer's block, and I don't understand how that happens. Everybody is different, right? But have you had writer's block? I mean, to me, you just at least write something, even if it's garbage.
yeah, no, I would say that I've never had writer's block. I
Mm,
might write for a while and then say, what's going to happen next? And I take the dog for a walk, the dogs, all four of them,
mm.
for a walk in the woods.
Four.
And,
Cool.
by the time we get back 45 minutes later, I know what's going to happen and I'm ready to go again. So, um,
Ah,
but,
so
my mind is always twirling that way. And I don't know if all writers are like that. I hear that many are, but if I'm driving somewhere, I'm writing in my head. If I'm
mm,
walking, I'm writing in my head. When I'm
mm,
stretching, I got music on, I'm writing in my head.
mm.
So by the time
So
I
in
sit
your
down, the writing is ready to be released.
so you don't forget any of what's in your head? Like when you're writing in your head, how do you keep it? Do you do any notes on your phone, or like how do you
Um, if
do
it's an
that without?
obscure time or something really specific that I'm worried about, I might take a note on my phone or write on a piece of
Mhm.
paper. But you ask, do I ever forget anything? Well, I wouldn't know, because who, who knows what great ideas I've had and forgotten.
That's funny. That's funny. So when you write, do you write on a typewriter, keep like a laptop? What do you? Some people I know still write in like actual paper and pen,
Yeah,
which
no, I know some people like that, but I'm absolutely on a laptop now,
yeah,
mostly because my desktop died. So
yeah.
we
Well, and
we moved over to the laptop.
well, they kind of go out every 3 to 4 years, don't they? They're like, no, we're gonna take you out. You're gonna have to pay the piper every few years
Right.
for these
But
these
we're
things.
gonna improve the technology so that your outdated computer no longer works, is kind of the long and short of it, right?
Exactly how it happens. So, well, typing I mean, you've got to think about the writers who were on typewriters. I mean, now we can just delete, edit, remove, rewrite. You delete something by accident, click that little funny squiggly arrow. We have all these tools that we didn't have, and you've got to think back to like, I know you love Hemingway, right? Just how they were able to do this on a typewriter, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I learned typewriter in high school when I was in high school, and you you made a mistake, you had to get out the white glue stuff and put it over the letter and wait
Well,
for it to
then
dry and then retype it. So
some of us kids like the way that smelled. Anyway, just there was a positive to mistakes, but eventually the page just becomes one sheer whiteout. You know what I mean? And it's like, what was the point?
is
So
this one of the things that you're afraid that will be exposed if the spotlight
I'm
is
not
cast upon you?
actually, it wasn't that. It was well, there were a few things that were smelly in school. That was one of them, right? But we didn't actually I used a typewriter as a teenager, but we didn't in my school, we did not, or schooling, typewriters were no, we didn't have that. Mm-mm. We had trigonometry calculators, and that's when I said I'll do history.
Right.
Timelines in that are easier. Like, what is that? Like, why are we doing that? Like, what is the purpose of trigonometry? Like, why are we doing this? And
Right.
everyone's like, well, you're going to need it in life. Algebra, everything is usable.
For 1 in a million people that become, NASA workers.
Yeah, I mean, Elon Musk likes his calculator. I don't know, but it just didn't resonate with me, and somehow history suddenly went from there to I rocked that. But there was those machines where you copied paper, um, like a pamphlet or something, and it was purple ink, and you'd smell that and you go, ooh, and
I don't
I don't
remember the
know.
purple ink, but I'll take your
Well,
word
this
for
was
it.
Africa, so it could have to do with Africa. Like it was just like you're making copies, for a handout in class, and then you always made sure you're the one to do that, so that you have the giggles for like the next 2 seconds. And then glue, that was a thing. I think there was some like not glue, but like when the spray butter came out, people thought you could get a little giggly on that. That was, see, I've already told you all my big secrets.
Yeah, no, those are
It's a
called whippets,
massive,
right?
yeah.
When
What?
whippets, when you get gas from one of those cans, and it's an empty can, but it still has the gas in it. I believe it's called doing a whippet.
Oh, I just know the dog. Apparently I'm not good at this. I'm not good at drugs either, but that's that. Well, anyway, there was fun times in high school, but not those kinds. But going back to, actually writing and what people have gone through the years, the editing, like I wonder if like Hemingway was edit like editing himself before he typed or editing himself while he was typing it, or just went and said, I'm having more rum, you know. But
He
he
was
didn't,
very dedicated to the craft when he was writing. He'd get up
he
the
didn't
first
drink when
thing in the
he didn't,
morning and
yeah, he didn't drink while he was writing. He only drank after, right? I think.
yeah, yeah. And he
Yeah.
would go out late at night drinking, but he'd be back up at 5 o'clock, at the typewriter. He liked to stand up when he was writing. And I'm not quite sure exactly what his editing process was,
Mm,
but
mm.
um,
What's yours like for you? Do you edit after, get it all out, and then go, okay, now I'll fix it? Or are you
yeah, I usually write pretty fast and furious, and then I go through a lot
okay?
of different edits. So
Mm,
I'm currently going through and doing my own personal edits on the second Max Creed book, which is
okay.
Everything versus Max Creed. So I'm editing that one and writing a new Clay Wolf one. So
Wow. So you're doing two at one time. So you can
um,
separate your people out. Like you can,
I'm generally doing at least three different books at the same time, but three different things on them. I'm always only
okay.
writing one, but I might be editing up to three different books depending on the stage of the edits because I have a
Mm,
paid for editor and then I have my publishing editor and I do my own edits. So there might be three books out there, which is very rare. Usually it's only one, but it's been known to be
mm.
three different where I got edits back to do from two of my editors while I was editing a different book. So
Wow.
um, and then marketing a book. So I'm generally, writing a book, one book,
Mm,
editing a different book, and marketing a third book.
wow. The marketing part too, that's got to be kind of again, that's like the business versus the creative, right? And then the editing part is like the have tos. And I remember when people first started self-publishing, and we all thought this is great. It's like, musicians can now do their own albums, which is great. But then if they didn't get the producer, to go in with the album, it's like, dude, something's wrong. And I remember some of these self-published books where somebody had a great idea, but they had characters that changed their name halfway through, and suddenly they went from being male to female. I mean, it's like just some real basic things, and we haven't even gotten started on grammar. Oh my God. So like all of these things happen, and it was sad, like because it kind of ruined the industry for a while. I know public publicity companies at one point that just said, that's it, we're not doing any more self-published people. And so now it's changed up. There's a lot more tools. There's a lot of for self-publishing with editing tools. But from everything I have read, from whatever size publishing house, and I love all the independent publishing houses. I think they're so important to support. If you don't have any kind of editing system, there's just no point to it. It to me, that's just, I'm not trying to be rude, but you must have
Oh,
an editor. You
oh,
can't do it.
absolutely.
It's
My
like,
books go through 7 to 9 different edits,
oh my God,
and
that could
on
be
the ninth
heartbreaking.
edit, mistakes are still found. You know,
Oh man.
I mean, they whittle their way down, but that final polish uh, edit usually finds a couple mistakes still. Where
Hmm.
one that often sneaks by is the word form and from.
Mm,
So when you read over that and the spell check doesn't catch it and the grammar doesn't seem to catch it and your eyes often don't catch it because you read what you want to read. So it
yeah.
takes the editor that is there with a ruler looking at every single word and not reading for content anymore to catch some of these things. So,
Wow. Yeah, because the program can't, do that. And well, I think we often fix things as we're reading it. Like our brain
right.
just already knows what it's meant. Like you're saying, you're reading what you want to read. I mean, how many times have I put up podcasts and went, oh my God, I've done all the artwork, everything is done with the name, it could be the craziest name and I'll get the crazy part right. And then Smith, like my last name, is backwards.
Yeah.
It'll be something like that. And it's like, oh my God, it's gone out. And I keep like, how do you retract things? And it happens. I mean, even with the magazines, the trick we've used is to read things. I mean, we go back and forth, and it's annoying. And that is why we all drink at the end of the day. It is. And so
Exactly.
it slows you down in the editing process. You may add some color to what you've written, some extra color you're not supposed to add, but we do it in different accents. We read it out
Uh,
aloud in different accents because it slows you down and it makes you do the form from, especially a good British accent. That's what we do.
oh,
It's our trick,
interesting.
but
One of the
doesn't
best
mean.
ways is to read it aloud to see
Mhm,
how it sounds, but adding accents.
it's
So,
fun. And a
yeah.
glass of wine, or you like dark liquor apparently.
Brown, brown liquor.
Brown. Okay. So what is your ultimate favorite? Because you're the king of happy hour on Big Blend Radio. What is your ultimate favorite cocktail? Like if they said to you, you're only, oh, let's do this album, cocktail, and book
Uh,
on the desert. And we can get it, we can add a last meal in there if you want to. I didn't say last meal, but if that's it, you know, one meal, one cocktail, or one drink, one album, one book. What are you doing? I'm gonna
um,
have to add this to the happy hour show.
well, certainly I would go with Glenlivet,
Mm,
and I usually drink it just on a few rocks. But if I was at a restaurant in the desert, I might get it as a Manhattan,
mm,
Scotch Manhattan. Um, Books right now, I've been really enjoying Lee Goldberg books. So I
mm.
just read Calico and Malibu Burning and have greatly enjoyed his books. And I'm not even sure of an album because I don't really listen to albums anymore.
I know, right? That's a hard thing. Well, who
So,
would you listen to?
um, I the Rolling Stones are still around, and they're a product of my '80s upbringing. So I
Hmm.
still enjoy the Rolling Stones quite a bit, and I
Hmm.
like Van Morrison,
Hmm.
and Jimmy Buffett is always a favorite, and some different
Joy.
country stars. So a little smattering. Ella Fitzgerald is a favorite of mine.
Oh yeah, well, you can't mess with her. She's like the
Yeah,
queen. She was the Beyonce of the day. She
yeah,
was. She's still like you can't. Her and Louis Armstrong together, like you just can't even.
yeah.
There's no replica of that. You know. Mm-mm. All right, and so meal. Let's hear the writer's food. What are you going to feast upon?
You know, I'm gonna have to say that one of my favorites has always been English muffin pizzas.
English muffins. Okay, so do you
English
make your own?
muffin
Do you make them
pizzas.
yourself?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
You put the pizza sauce on and the cheese and whatever toppings you want, and
Yeah.
uh, 3 or 4 of
Quick and
those is
easy.
a perfect little meal.
I'm gonna have to try that. We do that with flatbread, non bread.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's and it's healthy, you know. It's a good thing. Okay, so going back to the food, it was leading you up to three people you would have at a dinner party. Who would they be? So Ernest Hemingway. Okay, so you brought in authors, and so you're gonna have to get him some rum, I think, if he's coming to a dinner party with you. It's
Yes.
just
Yes, I'd have to
so.
get him some rum. And actually, I used to be a little bit of a rum drinker, and then when I went
Mhm,
to Cuba, the rum was just fantastic.
mhm,
But it almost kind of ruined me as a rum drinker because you don't get that good rum here. It's
mm,
much harder to find or get Cuban authentic rum. So I kind of fell off the wagon on that. But
mm.
we'd order a couple bottles of the Havana 7 for Ernest if he came to dinner, I guess.
Right on. We had rum from Cuba from our dentist when we lived in Mexico. Whenever he went somewhere, he brought us liquor.
He knew you well.
He did. He did. He did. And he caught me at a margarita bar once, a tequila bar in Ensenada. And he told me, like, no, you cannot drink. You've had this done and you've had this medication. You cannot drink. Well, we go, okay, sure. We went down the street and literally he caught me in the tequila bar. And his daughter, he was in his truck and his daughter comes running up and she says, Dr. Ruiz says, this is the only tequila you should be drinking. And he gave me a bottle.
Oh, really? So there's a type of tequila that you can drink when you're on medication from dental
Apparently,
work.
and it went crazy from there. I will not talk about the rest of that day, but boy, was it fun. I almost ran off with a band. But anyway, yeah, it was good. It was good. Okay, so Michael Corita. Who is
Burrito.
Michael? Okay, who is Michael Corita? I don't know.
He is another mystery author
Okay.
who I was at Crime Wave with him, a conference in Maine this past year. And
Uh-huh.
so before going to the conference, I decided to read one of the first books that I'd read of his. And he'd set it on an island in Maine because he now lives 6 months of the year in Camden and 6 months of the year in Idaho or somewhere like that.
Mm.
Um, and just absolutely loved the book. It was one of the better books I've ever read. So uh,
Wow.
I've since read another one of his that was equally, well, maybe not as good because the first one was An Honest Man was one of the best books I've read. So I enjoyed that
Mm.
greatly.
That's a good title too, because you can what? Like, I want to read that now. Michael Connolly, tell us about him.
I'm sure that many people have, if not read the books, watched Bosch on Netflix or some other form. Harry Bosch is his big one, or The Lincoln Lawyer is another one that's been made into a Netflix series, another series of his books.
Mm,
But those series are both great, but he also has a lot of standalones out there that are really exciting.
mm,
And so I've liked his books. They're
mm.
and they're very similar to mine, actually. I might be putting myself on too high of a pedestal to be up there with Connolly, but I feel like when he's writing something, it's like, oh, that feels like how I write things. So
Oh,
I identify with him well.
and he's got a good last name. Connolly is a good name. It's, I think it's Scottish. It sounds Scottish to me. You
Okay.
know, I don't know.
I
I'm
wasn't
just
sure if
saying
it was Scottish or Irish, but I would say
it
one
could
of
be. It
those.
could be. Yeah, it's going to be one of those. But it sounds. I think I'm thinking about the comedian now. That's what it is. Yeah, Yeah, that's where my brain goes right into things I shouldn't. But you talk about series. Would you want any of your series to be made into a Netflix or Hulu series or something like that?
Oh, absolutely. I would love that to happen. A halfway point is when my books get made into audibles. I, you know,
Mm,
have and right in love with two of my series narrators and just love what they do with it. But
that's
I
awesome.
years ago heard a good explanation because you often hear of writers who get their book made into a movie and the movie does not do it justice. And, they get very angry about that. But I heard an author say, if the movie's great, that's fantastic. I'll enjoy it. It'll bring more sales of my books. If the movie's terrible, well, everybody will say the book was better. So
Yeah,
it's a no-lose situation.
that's
So
how I look at it. Yeah, that's
yeah,
it's an interesting world how we can have all these different forms. And the audibles, I think so many people are listening to books now. It's almost mandatory to do now, right? To do for your books.
yeah, I had barely ever done it before a year, maybe 2 years ago.
Mm,
And now I often listen to Audible books when I'm doing something. But
yeah, that's a
I try not to do it too much because that's also my thinking time where I'm prepping myself for writing. So,
I need to start doing it when we drive because
right,
radio is terrible. And then, I listen to a lot of music. It's my thing. Or, podcasts or something like that, but or comedians. It keeps you happier with what people are doing on the road. It's like he said it, not me, or she did, not me. They said it when you're driving. But I think, everybody's commuting, or people that are commuting, or they're cleaning your house, you want to listen to something, to keep it all going. So I don't know. I see more and more. I think it's like at a 50% mark of people listening to books. I think we're that high up. I'm not sure,
is it
you
really that
know.
much? Wow.
I think
Yeah,
so. I think we're right up there. And then, the ebook seems to be a really big deal, which is good. We're not cutting down as many trees, right? But
right. Absolutely. It's saving on trees
mm,
and they're cheaper,
mm,
generally
yeah.
speaking. My Kindle books on Amazon are 6.99 to 8.99
Mm,
versus 17.99 for a
yeah.
paperback. So, and to tell you the truth, I make the same amount of money whether people buy an ebook or a
Oh,
paperback.
so Nick's no, as we travel the country, we pet sit. And so and it's not a money thing. It's just, hey, that's what we do. We get our work in between our parks and hang out with animals, dogs and cats and snakes and all kinds of things. Sometimes a donkey and pigs, it's fun. Well, no, we have great adventures, but
Yeah,
it is interesting to us, like to go in houses across America and learn about the communities and live in them, and get to know the communities. But what's amazing to us is where's the books? Where's the album collection? You know? So you see a few here and there. And back in the day, we had more, everybody had a bookshelf, with books. And then sometimes you go to a place and it's like, yay, this person, it's like a candy store of books. You're like, yippee. So it's really kind of changed our lifestyle of how we live in our homes. Like, when someone goes in, you don't know who are these people. You can tell like what people's interests are by what they read and what they listen to, but there's like nothing. It's
right.
like,
And they might be big readers and big music fans and
yeah,
without any albums or books. So,
yeah. So, well, art kind of helps too in photos, but I'm just it's a really different makeup to see how things have changed in the book world. But it is always fun having you on the show, and I do love your answer. And everyone, Matt has a Q&A that he did by email. So you can check that out. The link is in the episode notes. But I did ask you if you could switch careers for a day just to learn something new. You wanted to be Santa? Do you
and
like Santa Claus?
well, as you can tell, I'm working on growing the beard to
I
fit the
wasn't going to
part.
say it.
So
I let you do
ever
it.
since
Yeah.
you asked me that question, I thought, boy, that would be a one good 1 day job,
Wouldn't
bringing
it be, would you,
toys and gifts
and
to
books?
people all around the world and books.
That's what I thought. I was like, Matt just wants to have a free ride around the world and be able to like give off gifts everywhere, like in books. But you'd have a free ride. I mean, to me, could you imagine that? You
Yeah.
know, be tracked by NORAD and, it's like, where's Matt now? That would be cool. And people leave you cookies, you know,
Yes.
and eggnog.
An eggnog,
Eggnog.
maybe
That
with
could
rum in it.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. This could be a good thing. Well, thanks so much, Matt. It is always good to have you on the shows. Everyone, mattcost.net is the website to go to. We'll talk about cults soon.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lisa. And looking forward to talking about cults.
Yes, everyone, November 18th is National Cult Awareness Day. So we're looking forward to that. Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio. Keep up with our shows at bigblendradio.com.